Hi, and welcome back to Prep Bytes. In this series, where we're creating our very own live chat application, we've managed to go in and get started with our backend. So, up until now, we have created in our APIs for login and registration. And just to give you guys a quick summary of what all we've managed to do so far, I'm going to just take you back into our code and carry on with our process. Okay. So I have my VS Code over here with both my client as well as my server. And so far in our backend, we have went in and created all of our schemas and generated the specific models for them as well. So for example, in terms of chat, as you can see, we created schema for the chat model, and we've also created our model for the same using Mongoose. So we have done the same for message as well as for user model, and post which we have started in with going in and creating our controllers, right? So these are basically going to be the operations that we'll be able to go in and perform. So as you can see in the previous session, we have managed to go in and create these two altogether, which is our login controller and our register controller, right? So the only thing that is remaining in for implementing both of these is to go in and implement the match password, a function to go in and match both of the passwords, and to also provide encryption for our password. So the reason we want encryption is fairly simple, because obviously if you are using in some kind of password here, you would want it so that the password is not easily readable or like directly accessible to anyone, even if it is being stored in our very own database. So for achieving this, we are going to be going in and utilizing a particular library called as bcrypt.js. Bcrypt.js is just an optimized version of bcrypt. I'll just take you through the whole the library once and the implementation. And another really important aspect of our login and registration is gonna be our JWT token. Okay, this JWT token is gonna be a really crucial factor when it comes down to our authentication and our authorization. So I'll be deep diving into a bit more on how this JWT token kind of goes in and works. And we've already managed to go in and create up a function which generates our JWT token. And it is fairly easy to go in and do so as well. As you can see, I have went in and created this small function over here called as generate token. And for doing so, we are using this library, which is the JSON web token, JWT. And the process of going in and creating our JWT is fairly simple. All you have to go in and do is just provide the JWT secret and some additional information on up until when it goes in and expires. So this JWT token is what will aid us in the overall authentication as well as authorization, so that the person who has went in and logged in or signed in is able to perform some operations, let's say for creating a group or create chatting with another person or creating a new chat altogether, right? So we're going to be going in and creating our authentication middleware as well in the upcoming video. So this is something that we have already taken care of, right? But what we want to do now is the encryption process for the password. Okay, so for doing this, this was something that was remaining in from our previous video as well. Okay, so I've managed to go in and add in some additional code in here and a few more controllers, which I'll be explaining along the way. Now, talking about this process of going in and encrypting our password, we are going to be using something called as bcrypt.js, right? So you can easily just go in and jump into the documentation that is available in the internet. So as you can see, bcrypt.js is just an optimized version of the bcrypt library with zero dependencies. And the way to go in and use this library is also fairly simple. It's not that difficult to go in and integrate into your application. It's fairly simple to do so. So the very first thing you will have to go in and do is to install this particular library and import it into your code. So as you can see in here, I've already gone through this process. And if I show you my JSON package.json, you'll be able to go in and notice that I do have bcrypt.js installed into my application. Okay, so once this is done, you'll have to go in and import it such that you are able to utilize this particular library. So where exactly do I go in and do this? So the thing here is in the part where we had went in and created all of the schemas. So I have my user model over here. So this is the part where I created my user schema. This is something we had already done up until in the previous session. Now, what we want to do is we have to go in and create up this middleware by using the pre-function, all courtesy of Mongoose. You can go through the documentation of the same as well. Now, what I've done is I managed to go in and utilize these two or create these two functions over here. This is the same match password that we are going to be using within our user controller over here in order to go in and authenticate our users. Okay, so once the user goes in and signs in, as you can see in here, so for the login process, what you can do is we're going to be requiring this match password method, which we have managed to go in and specify within our model, right? So as you can see, I have a match password and also I have this middleware over here. And as you can see, I'm calling the next method. You can go through the documentation for the same. This is just so that the next middleware, whichever if it exists, goes in and gets executed. Now, in order to go in and use this bcrypt library, the process is really simple. There is one terminology though that you need to be familiar with, and that is something called as salt. So salt is basically, you could say, is a factor that basically dictates how much encryption goes into your password. Okay, so the higher the salt value, the more encryption goes in to your password, and it'll be difficult for people to go in and crack the same. Okay, so the higher the value, the more secure it would be. But that doesn't mean you go in and you add in a really large number. A value or a salt of 10 is more than sufficient for your security requirements. So if I take you back into the documentation over here, you can notice the same things coming up. So you can see like in the browser as such, we are going to directly jump into the usage process. So if you want to go in and hash a password, this is the process of going in and doing so. You're going to be using this particular function called as generate salt. I'm just going to use generate salt and then just pass in the salt value. In generic cases, we tend to go in and just stick with 10. Okay. And then once we are done with the same process, you are able to go in and check the password using the compare function. This is the same exact thing that I've managed to go in and do within our code as well. So for the match password function that is available over here, I've used the same compare function to go in and validate the password. Because the thing is, this particular library will be encrypting our password. Okay, so I'll go in and use Postman in order to go in and show you how this thing works. And even in our database, our password is going to be shown up in an encrypted format. Okay, so if you want to go in and compare the already existing password and the password that we have entered right now, then we are going to require this compare function, this method called as compare, all available within our library, which is bcrypt.js. Okay, so this is the overall process. You can go in and read through the whole thing so as you get a bit more idea on how this library works. But all in with that, I'm just going to go in and directly take you back into my code, because we are also going to be discussing on how exactly we can integrate this login and registration onto our front end in this video. Okay, so basically just taking you back into my code over here. Now the thing here is, if I take you to my user controller, these are the two such controllers that we are going to be going in and integrating into our application now. Okay, so I'm a login controller and my register controller, and both of these are going to be used in for the login and the register routes. Okay, so there's going to be a login API, okay, and a register API, and both of these APIs are going to be basically performing the operations that we specified within these controllers. Okay, so we've already managed to go in and create both of these, and let's see how this goes in and works out. So I'm gonna go in. So generally, whenever you are doing development in terms of backend, a pretty useful tool to go in and utilize here is that of Postman. You can use this to go in and check in whether the routes, the APIs that you created are working in the way that they should. So as you can see in here within my within this Postman, I've managed to go in and specify. So this is a post request. You can go in and specify which type of HTTP request are you making. I have specified that it's a post request, so I'm specifying this as post over here. There are also some additional collection, that I have created out over here and saved in just in case, so that it'd be easier for me to go in and take you through the whole process. Okay, so this is going to be the route for registration, and by going in and invoking a call to this particular URL, I'll be able to go in and perform the registration process. So the way this works is, see, as we want to go in and do the authentication and the authorization process, the way this works is fairly simple. So in case you people are not so familiar with how authentication and authorization works, I'll try to go in and give you a really short, introduction into this process. Okay. So let's say, for example, I want to go in and, or let's say, for example, I'm starting to go in and use this particular application of mine, right? So the first thing that I'll be going in and doing is to do the registration process. Okay. So when I do the registration, I'm going to be going in and providing my username, my email, and I'll just go in and mention this up over here. I'll provide my username, I'll be providing my email, and the third information that I'm going to be providing is gonna be the password. So this is something that we already went in and mentioned out within our schema, right? So in our schema itself, the user schema, right? The user model will basically consist of these three pieces of information. Now, what we are going to be doing here is that we are going to be using bcrypt in order to go in and encrypt our password. So all of this information is ultimately going to go in and get stored in our MongoDB database, right? Now, once this goes in and occurs, so when the registration process is going to go in and take place, one of the things that's going to happen is that we will be going in and generating a token. Okay, we'll be generating a token for that particular user. So let's say, for example, that the user that is currently involved is, let's say, is user 1. So this is the user that is currently involved. So for this particular user, we are going to be going in and generating a token, okay, our JWT token. So this token is going to be a hashed value as in such. If you want more information on how this particular library goes in and works, you can definitely go in and check out their documentation. So our JWT token would go in and look somewhat like this, and it's an encoded version which can be then further decoded to go in and get further information in about that particular user. All right. So the idea here is, when I go in and perform this registration procedure, we'll be generating this token for our user. All right. So token will be generated token, and this generated token, okay, is going to be went in and stored up within our database as well. Okay, this is also going to be went in and sent to our database, to our MongoDB database. Okay, now the good thing here is, once the registration process is done, okay, so if I go in and perform the registration process, for each and every other user, there is going to be a JWT token that will be generated and will be stored up in our database. Now, when it comes to going in and providing authentication, okay, for login, you're going to just go in and require the username and the password. That's all. Okay, that is fairly straightforward and simple. But this token, okay, is going to be really, really important for the further authentication that we are going to go in and do. Okay, so we'll be later going in the upcoming video, we'll be going in and creating our authentication middleware, where this token is going to be a pretty big will play a really big role in providing us authentication, so that if a user wants to go and perform some operation, we can ensure that this user has already signed in and is capable of going in and performing those operations, right? So this is so far what we want to do. So if I go in and perform the registration procedure, we'll be providing the username, email, and password via our client, and this is going to be, then the password is going to be encrypted courtesy of bcrypt, and we are also going to be generating our JWT token and getting it stored in our database. Now, the next time we go in and we log in, the same token that has been generated is going to be fetched, and we'll be using the same token for further authentication in our application. Okay. So just to go in and see how this whole thing works out. So one of the things that you'll have to go in and do right now is to implement both of these methods. So you'll have to go in and use the compare function, as well as go in and encrypt your password using this hash function of ours, right? So it will go in and encrypt our password, so that before it goes and gets sent through, the password will go in and get encrypted. Okay, so in order to go in and check whether this is going and working in as it should, I have something already set up within my Postman over here, right? So I'm just going to zoom in a bit on everything so that it be a bit more visible on for you people. And as you can see, as I was already saying, for any registration that is to occur, these are the three information that we are gonna be passing. So I'm gonna be passing an object over here, which is gonna be part of my request body. And inside of the request body, I'll have these three main information, which is gonna be the name, email, and password. So when this information is gonna go in and get sent, the information will be, the password that I have will be encrypted and then sent into my database. Okay, so I have everything that is required in for this process set up and ready. So in order for me to go in and fire this up, I will have to go in and instantiate my server. Okay, so I'm just gonna go in and jump back into my VS Code, close up all of these, and just open up my terminal. So I'm gonna fire up my server over here so that we can see this process up and running. So I'm going to just quickly go in and get this started. So we'll get in this message saying that the server is running and it is connected to the database. Okay, so this is all in all good. And if I show you the database that we are currently working with, within the collection, so you can see I have my chats and users collections already available over here. And there is this user one already present. I could just go in and get it removed out for the time being so that I can see you. I can go in and show you how exactly the encryption goes in and pans out. All right. So I'm just going to keep this in here as it is. Okay. So this is my collection for the users. And now coming back into Postman, I will go in and fire up my registration process. Okay. So I'm giving in this name over here. Let me just change this names. So I'm going to say user one. We're going to go in and try to keep the password in mind because yes, for the login procedure also, we are going to require this password. So I'm going to just keep the password as just password. Okay. Don't do this in a normal scenario. For now, I'm just going to keep it as password. Okay. So these are three main information that I'm passing onto my API, which is the username, the email, and the password. So when I go in and send this, as you can see, it goes in and returns me the ID of the generated user, the name of the user, the email ID, and this is the important task over here. So I'm not going in and returning back the password because I do not need it. The token is something which we are gonna require. Okay, so my idea over here is if you're registering for the first time, it'll directly go in and take you into the app. You need not go in and log in back again. It'll directly take you into the app. But this token that you see here, right? This is something which is really, really important for us to go in and provide in the authentication and authorization later up in our application. Okay, so this is the token which has been generated. Now, let me show you what updates can we see within our database. So if I go in and take you back into my database over here, and I'm going to give it a quick refresh. And once it refreshes, you will be able to go in and notice an additional entry into my users pan collection over here. Now, as you can see, for user one, the name is, so for every single entry, there is going to be an automatically generated ID. This is something we are going to be requiring in pretty much. As you can see, the username is user1. I have test1@email.com, which is what I had given in. And as you can see, the password has been encrypted courtesy of bcrypt. Okay. Now, this is all in all good. Okay. So we have our password and everything generated out. And as you can see, even though the password was just password, it is not going to go in and show up within our database. Okay. That's because we have provided in the encryption for this. Now, in order for us to go in and do the login process, we've also managed to go in and create another route which is for login. Okay, so I'm just going to try to remember this. So this is user1 test1@email.com. Okay, so I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to change. So for the email operation, okay, we are providing just two things. The first is going to be the username, which is user1. And then the next thing I need to provide is the password. Okay, now this is the point where the match password function that we had managed to go in and add into our schema over here, okay, into our model over here, will come into handy. So this is a pre-built or a predefined function, this compare function. Okay, match password is something we created by ourselves, but compare is a pre-built function that we are utilizing over here, which just goes in and compares the entered password with the password which is already present within our database. Okay, so this goes in and takes care of that entire operation. Now, if I go in and take you into my user controller over here, the login process is fairly simple. In the request body, I am passing the name and the password. And once I go in and I find the entry for that particular user, I'm going to go in and match the password for that same user. All right. And once that is done, I'm going to be sending back a response with the same token that we'll be generating for that particular user. So every user will have its own token available for him. So even in case of registration, we are providing back the token, and even in case of the login, we are providing back the token, because the same token is going to be really, really important for us to provide the authentication later up ahead. Now here, as you can see, I've stored this inside of the often a variable called as response, and that's what I'm sending back up over here. And this is it. So let's try to fire up this login route and see whether it goes in and works out as it should. So I'm gonna go back in over here, and if I send in a request, there you go. As you can see, when I'm going in and passing this login request, okay, it is going in and returning me back with the token that has been generated for the current user. So if you're getting this particular information, all in all, it's good. So, but if I go in and I change the password, let's say I'm giving the password as password 123, which is incorrect. So if I go in and send this, you'll be able to see that we are getting back a response saying that it's an invalid username or password. So if the password and the username matches correctly as per it is there within our database, everything will go in and work out as it should, and it should go in and return us with the information or the requisite response that is required in for our application. Okay. Now, what we are going to be doing is, in the next video, we're going to be integrating these two specific routes of ours, which is the login and registration route, into our UI. Okay, so we've already have created in these login and registration components already. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be going in and seeing how exactly can we go in and utilize these two routes to go in and do the login and registration process. Okay, so that will be all for this particular video. We'll see you in the next one.